Mr. Phillips, good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good.
All right. Well, at this point, good afternoon from the Tech Collective. My name is Monica Corda. I'm the Director of Member Relations for the Tech Collective, and we're thrilled to have you here. So for those of you maybe who are unfamiliar, we have folks all the way from Ohio. There may be other folks further away. The Tech Collective is the IT industry association for the state of Rhode Island. And certainly in this post-COVID world, we are virtual and open to anyone attending our events from wherever you may be. We provide info sessions like this, as well as trainings, certifications in security, in data, and soft skills as well. So Mike Vikdal, the presenter today, is the president of the Auslan Group. He has trained nearly 400 Tech Collective members in the past year and a half for us. And I think I can really realistically say, right, you've written the book, Mike, on ITIL, or at least some of the books, or perhaps some of the chapters on ITIL. So we are thrilled to have you here today, and I'm going to hand the baton to you so you can fill these people with the information that they came here to hear.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Creusa and Monica, thank you so much for your efforts. Great turnout here today. I guess I'm further west than the Cincinnati folks. I'm outside of Denver, towards Boulder, here in Colorado, and let's go ahead and share my screen, kind of get this started, since we have a rather short period of time here and a little bit of content to kind of go through. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all really about what service management practices are, really leveraging ITIL, ITIL 4 more specifically, the latest release of ITIL, and kind of what it does for us within our space. And it's not just about ITIL, there's many other practices that are out there as well. So ITIL is very complementary to those. As Monica mentioned, I am the president of the Auslan Group. Been around for 16 years now, doing the IT service management practices and consulting and primarily education. We just finished a class, matter of fact, with Tech Collective this week, and went really well. Actually, last week. How time flies. And it was the ITIL Foundation course, and we do many other courses as well, many of which we'll see as far as a practice here within this presentation. So I do have some slides to kind of go through, and they're going to kind of go fast since it is a very high level conversation in regards to what these other practices might be. But we'll talk about specifically ITIL. We'll talk a little bit about DevOps. We'll talk a little bit about Lean and Agile, as well as how do we integrate tools and technologies with these practices. These are all, for the most part, one sliders, maybe two sliders in regards to each topic. And we'll start it all off with really what is IT service management, or what is service management in general, and what do we as an organization do to leverage these practices, leverage the concepts of service management, more specifically IT service management. At the end, we'll talk about something that's kind of driving all this home, which is actually very exciting. And Monica mentioned we've kind of put through about 400 people within Tech Collective in ITIL related courses, or IT service management courses. One was, in fact, the experiential learning piece. We put a number of folks through, I want to say about 350 of them through the simulation class. We'll talk about that at the very end. And then we'll just kind of close it. Hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the very end. All right. So with that, let's just talk real quick about what is service management. Now, by definition, this is service management. Service management really is a set of specialized our organizational capabilities of enabling that value to our consumers and our customers that are out there. And we're doing this in the form of services. Now, you also have to qualify really what is a service. And service is all about making sure whatever we do, we enable our customers to do what they need to do without them really taking on the overarching cost and risk of delivering that service. So service management is, yes, turn it backwards, the management of services. Well, the question is, how do we do that? And where within the organization are we doing this? Are we focusing on service management as a practice within the organization? So what we do is we break it down from what we do as an IT-based organization. And so now we have IT service management. And what is IT service management? Well, there's a definition for that. Now, this is the implementation and the management of the quality IT services that we as an IT organization deliver to the business so that the business can in fact be enabled to be successful, more successful. So what does that take into consideration? Well, IT service management takes into consideration, you see on the left-hand side there, the technologies, the processes, and the services that we are going to be delivering so we can enable the business to be successful. We also take into consideration, much more now in the ITIL 4 release of ITIL, and that is the more the human side or the people side, the cultural side of how we do things and how we get things done, of which I might say with my experience in many organizations that are out there, this might be an area that we seem to take to the side. We talk a lot about process, we talk a lot about procedure, we talk a lot about technology. What about the people side? What about the people? Are we as people, as a culture, as an organization, able to embrace this as we go forward? Another key enablement to this area of ITSM is the fact that we have standardized processes and procedures, and standardized is a strong word, and that is the fact that we have standardized a model of sorts to say this is the process, this is the procedure that's mandated for the most part by a policy that we need to have in place to say this is what we're going to do. That goes right back to the cultural side as well. Are we in a position to handle that? The other complementary aspects of IT service management is the fact that we don't own everything. It's not all of our stuff, therefore we must depend upon partners and suppliers, of which some of you do, for your customers that are out there as well. You offer your goods and services to them so that they can go off and be successful within what they're tasked to do. We call this service relationship. And that's a relationship between what organization provides goods and services to what other organization so that they can go off and do what they need to do with our goods and services, so that they can go off and provide goods and services to their customers and consumers, so that they can go on and on and on. It doesn't stop. It just continues. So this is where IT service management comes into play. So ITSM cannot exist by itself. IT service management and our abilities as an IT organization to deliver that value back to the business so that the business can in fact be successful. These are some of the complementary enabling aspects of what we do to truly be successful as an IT-based organization. Now, when we start thinking about an IT-based organization, IT service management as a practice within the organization, well, typically, when we think about IT organizations, we are technology-based organizations in many cases. Not only do I say that, but if anybody's reading CIO magazine, they're kind of saying the same thing. When I say they, typically the upper management staff, where there might be maybe an us and them mentality. And that mentality might be, well, they, IT, don't understand what we, the business, need in order to be successful. I just wish that they could understand our needs, our wants, our desires. IT is kind of saying the same thing. They, the business, don't understand what it takes to make this work on time and within budget with the existing resources that we have, resources, whether it be technology, whether it be funds, whether it be a third party, whether it be our own internal staff. So what IT service management typically does is it transforms that organization to become much more of a true service-based or a service provider to the business and our consumers that make us who we are in the marketplace. On the left-hand side, we talk about a traditional IT organization that is typically technology-based. They are very reactive in nature. I don't say that, the analysts say that. Very much of a firefighting organization to where we're constantly reacting to things that take place, i.e. incident management, where we are focused on individual users. And you could read the list as well, especially the one we talk about silos and ad hoc based organizations. silos where we have silos where that team and that team and that team and that team are in fact the silos of the organization, and therefore we might be focusing on the silos, the users, what my team does, not what the other teams do. What do we do to enable that value creation? So IT service management as a practice transforms us into a process-based organization, becoming much more proactive as opposed to reactive, becoming much more preventive or predictive, if you want to start going down the Gartner IT maturity model that they've got. We're focusing much more on not just individual users, but the customer value delivery, as the last bullet says on the right-hand side, making sure that what we do is aligned to the business, where we bust these silos down and we don't have the us and them mentality. We are, in fact, one, as if anybody's ever read the book called The Toyota Way, which is a fantastic book that talks a lot about we are one, we are Toyota. And what we talk about here is transforming the organization from the left to the right by leveraging, adopting, adapting, and enabling us as an organization to do this. The question is, what complements IT service management as a practice in the organization? There's many, many different industry practices that are out there, of which you see a slew of them on the screen here. Is this an all-inclusive list? Absolutely not. We will talk about a few of these, but the question is, what about DevOps? We'll talk about that one. What about ITIL? What about TOGAF? What about ETOM? What about Prince? What about PMPs? What about Agile? What about SCRUM? Right? These are all different practices, or even standards that are out there, like ISO 20000, NIST, PCI. Those types of things are things that we have to abide by. But the question is, what does our organization need to leverage as an industry recognized practice to help us adhere to / comply with those standards, policies, regulations, whatever it might be, right? So these are a slew of the practices that are out there, but ITSM is enabled by these practices, of which many of these have been around for decades. If anybody can go back to, even ITIL has been around for 30 years or so. But I talk about TQM, from Dr. Edwards Deming, that has been around for, 60 years. So these are practices that have been around for a long time. Some are new, some are, just now getting mature in organizations. They've been around for 20 years or more. So the question is, what do we choose? Which one do we choose? I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to achieve, but are you going to choose just one? The answer to that is, one, I would never recommend that. Two, which ones do we need to have in place in order to accommodate what we've been tasked to do as an IT organization? So we need to take into consideration what these practices are. Let's run through a few of these, such as ITIL and DevOps and Agile, Lean, as well as experiential side. So let's talk a little bit about a few of these here. Now, kind of set the stage here for talking about a few of these at a very high level perspective, keeping in mind that this is a very short presentation, but it's hopefully going to whet your appetite for other sessions that we will be hosting for you, where we dig down deeper into, say, ITIL or DevOps or LeanIT or tool integration, the do's, the don'ts, the taking considerations of. These would be other practices that we'll be talking about in further courses. So stay tuned to those as well, okay? So we talk about ITIL. ITIL is near and dear to my heart. I've been doing ITIL for a rather long time. I've been doing ITIL, we'll call it since the early 90s. Not knowing I was doing ITIL because we never called it ITIL when I worked at a company called Compact Computer Corporation in Houston. And ITIL has become the de facto standard for IT service management. So it's become the de facto standard for service management as a whole, whether it be from the time we think about it, to the time we develop it, to the time we test it, get it ready for the operational space, to the time we deploy it. Now it's in operations, up to the point where we are going to retire it. ITIL has become that de facto standard for that. Now, does that mean that you don't need any other practice out there by leveraging these 6 core publications? No, it can't. It cannot survive on its own as a practice. It must be embedded into and leveraging other practices like Agile, SCRUM, or DevOps, ones we'll talk about as well. So these 6 publications that are out there within ITIL are publications that guide us. They guide us down the path of service management in the best interest of the business needs. Any one of these publications can in fact contribute to your ability to help deliver that in a more cost-effective, timely, more efficient, more effective, so on and so forth, fashion within the organization. Okay? It's been around again for 30 plus years, and there's just a ton of information, a ton of industry-based knowledge that's all now been written and put into these books here. I've been fortunate enough to be part of the development team of the blue one there called Direct Plan and Improve. We wrote this and we came out with this over a year ago now. I take that back. I consider 2020 to be a waste, so we'll call that 2019. So, and all these are courses as well. So these are all courses you can take today, with the latest release being the one on the far right-hand side called Digital and IT Strategy, within what we call the ITIL leader, strategic leader path. So you can take any one of these paths and go down and get higher education in the ITIL space. Personally, I am fond of ITIL, not because I've been doing it for a long time. Well, that's part of it. It works. It works. I've seen it work. I've done it. I've rolled it out. We won't say implementation of, because you really don't implement these practices. You adopt, you adapt to these practices and what they might recommend. They don't tell you to do anything. They recommend to do certain things because we have over 30 years of experience with this. So ITIL 4 is in fact the latest release of ITIL. We don't call it ITIL version 4, we call it ITIL 4. Which I'm happy, because I'm not a big fan of versioning a good practice, but we have to have some sort of means of content management and content delivery. So ITIL 4 came out in March of 19, and officially with the exam and the content. And that is, I have to say, maybe I've taught the very first one in the entire world, where you have the class and the foundation exam with it. I guess we kind of cheated because we did this in Tokyo, Japan. So, but ITIL has kind of changed a little bit because the industry have changed. You know, DevOps wasn't even around when the previous release of ITIL came. Lean's been around, LeanIT, fairly new to the marketplace. Agile, just getting a really good traction in the marketplace, as well as other practices as well. So ITIL 4 came out, and they kind of put a nice wrapper around what we had before. So now we talk about how ITIL 4 wraps around a very holistic, broad, focused approach to service management. And we do this by leveraging the 4 dimensions, as well as the service value chain. The service value chain is where all the meat is at with that particular practice, right? So in the other classes, we'll talk a lot more about what these are at a very high level. If you want to dig down deeper into them, then maybe you can think about taking the class for that. ITIL is also very complementary to another practice called DevOps, one of the newest trends that really does, in fact, take that application of the development side into the operational side and kind of bridges that gap known as the wall of confusion between the two. DevOps is getting a lot of traction in the marketplace. There's now a conference on 2 different continents every single year. It's called the DevOps Enterprise Summit, which kind of Gene Kim, who's the author of the Phoenix Project, if you're familiar with that, has kind of created this whole, the revolution aspect of IT. But it brings these teams together because you cannot separate the development side of the operations side. They are one. These are the silos that we talked about. Right? We need to bust these down and make them one and think about how we can actually embrace those as well. ITIL is very, very complementary to DevOps, as DevOps is to ITIL. Another practice that's out there is one, LeanIT. And LeanIT, fairly new to the marketplace. Lean's been around a long time, but from a LeanIT perspective, in some cases, some might say, yeah, it was kind of spawned from that book called The Toyota Way, or from Toyota. But this is all about kind of, the development of the management of the products and services. It says here, the goal is to continuously improve. Does ITIL do that? It does. It talks about continual improvement as a practice. It talks about improving at each iteration. Are they overlapping? To some extent, but for very different reasons, right? ITIL recommends leveraging LeanIT. LeanIT will speak to other things like, all right, Japanese words, the muda, the muri, and the mura. So we think about those and removal of waste and efficiency and workloads and those types of things. So LeanIT brings that to the table. Does that overlap and say, well, yeah, we're going to do LeanIT and not ITIL? No, they're there for very different reasons, bringing in Kanban and those types of boards as well. Another approach could be the Agile. I know many of you actually on the phone now, on the video now, are Agile aware, right? And SCRUM certified, I'm guessing. I do not claim to be an expert in Agile, but I do say that Agile is a necessity. When you think about this whole incremental approach to project management and how we're going to do these things within project management, typically speaking, in the pre-operational state. And then we bring in Scrum practices where we need to take in consideration where it says it's an adaptive, iterative approach that is fast, flexible, and effective for designing and the delivery of value, quickly, and throughout the entire project, up to the point where it's thrown in operations, maybe even a warranty state, right? So here's where we start talking about having these cross-functional teams that are self-organized and empowered, which is a very, very strong word, is empowered to go off and do what they need to do, to make decisions on their own as they go forward. ITIL talks to this as well. Matter of fact, ITIL talks very specifically to the Agile in the Agile manifesto, right? So these practices are practices at a very high level that kind of bring all of this together. Are you going to do just ITIL or DevOps or Lean, Agile, Scrum, TOGAF, ETOM, Prince, whatever that might be? No, it's ITIL and or DevOps and or Lean and or. The question is, how do we bring these together? The class we had last week, one of the students asked, hey, we're already Agile aware. Is this overlapping with what we do? No, it's not, right? More on those in some other classes we'll have announced to you shortly. The technology integration. Nobody's immune to technology. You all have to use technology. So when we think about technology, and I put this sentence up here in the very beginning where it says, regardless of the technology, an organization will only obtain minimal value as well as a return on the investment of that technology if the people first, then the processes are not clearly defined, documented, understood, and focusing from a very holistic approach. If we don't take the people and the processes, procedures, and policies into consideration first and foremost, then you're buying technology for the sake of technology, a very niche purchase typically in the organization. So we depend upon it. We have to do it, right? In some cases, legally bound to. So we think about leveraging these approaches. One is this one called Moscow, which is kind of an interesting acronym, but we need to take into consideration kind of an analysis of what must be done, should be done, could be done, maybe won't be done now or otherwise. Now I put in here the Gartner Magic Quadrant of the tools and technologies that are aligned to IT service management enablement. 2 that fit in the upper right-hand side, 3, sorry, it could be Avanti came in, sneaking that in, which is great. But there's only 2 in the Magic Quadrant, and that is ServiceNow. Sorry, 3 in the Magic Quadrant. There only used to be 2 for years. ServiceNow, BMC Software, and now Avanti, right? Formerly Heat and other products that are out there. But there's a lot on the lower left-hand side that have the position to become those other products that actually truly enable a very holistic approach to service technologies and such. Another very complementary approach to these practices is the fact that the experiential side. Now, these simulations we've done, I want to say, Monica or Grace, we put probably 350 people through the simulation just within Tech Collective, and every single one of them come back basically saying, I don't want to put words on those evals, but basically saying that this is one of the best classes they've ever taken. Right? This is the experiential side. Yes, they are on site, and we've done some with the social distancing, all that fun stuff as well. Hopefully sometime soon we'll all be back on site again. But this is the fun, the experiential, the learn by doing. I really like that last bullet where it says the bottom line, by taking and going through the experiential learning pieces here, It really does, in fact, give you that aha moment, right? So you can experience what all this is and see what the benefits of these service management practices are. Now, you can see this on your own in regards to the benefits of these best practices and standards. And the question is, which one do we choose? Well, you have to evaluate them and identify what is the end in mind, and what are we trying to accomplish to meet those objectives. So we can take these bullets and identify which one of the practices are going to accommodate what we're looking to do now, but also in the near future, even long term. Because these should be strategic approaches to leveraging these service management practices. All right. I know we're kind of already running towards time here, and that's a very short, quick approach to the service management practices, some of the technology and concepts and integration, because these technologies are developed against these practices, more specifically like ITIL. BMC, Avante, ServiceNow, they're all developed against the practice recommendation of ITIL in most cases, right? So what are some of these things we need to take in consideration, right? They have their own unique benefits. So you need to identify which one's going to benefit you the most today, but also near or even long term, hopefully long term. But there are some very niche areas that ITIL can just automatically, hey, how do we do root cause analysis? Boom, ITIL's got an answer for that, right? Or a recommendation for that. Education is key. Certification is key. It adds a lot of value and credibility to the organization, getting education certified. But also, look at the bottom bullet there where it says organizational commitment, right? This is the cultural side to what we need to do. We need to be committed to these practices that are out there. Whichever one you choose, you need to have. We need to be committed to that. That's the cultural side. How do we settle the value to the team, to the individuals, to help them understand how this practice, not the flavor of the day, but how is this practice going to enable us to be more successful in the near future? All right. So again, that is a rather quick 15 slides or so in regards to these service management practices that we might recommend. Now, many of you may be doing all of these. Maybe you're focused on ITIL, maybe Agile, SCRUM, DevOps, whatever it might be. Fantastic. Can that integrate into ITIL? And I'll just tell you now, the answer is yes. There isn't a single practice out there I can think of where ITIL does not complement another practice that's out there. All right. So with that being said, that was quick, but we will be doing some other ones in the near future. We'll be digging down deeper into ITIL or DevOps or simulations and other things as well. All right.
Super.
So with that being said, I'll leave it open for any questions.
Thank you so much, Mike. I know we've asked from you nearly the impossible, right? To give that an overview in 26 minutes.
Right.
So two things. One is within the chat, I put just a form. If it's one question, if everyone could take a moment just to answer. And then David Cote had a question about what about Jira Service Management?
Yeah, good question. That's take the Jira. The Jira technologies obviously advancing themselves into even the operational space as opposed to just the development side. Jira, take a Jira like a Remedy or a Jira like a ServiceNow, much more on the development side, and all the issues and all of our progress and documentation and that very much associated to. So in that magic quadrant, that's a good question, David, because they don't bring in things like Jira. And there's many other technologies that were not brought into that particular magic quadrant. But Jira is very much a player in this space as well. Does it reside within the ITIL space? Absolutely, because ITIL is now much more on the pre-operational side, maybe more so than we have in the past, working with Agile and DevOps and other practices as well. So Jira is going to be a major player in there as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask Gartner why they don't have it within that. It should be there.
I agree. When I saw this, actually one that came out in September. And I looked at that, and now Jira is a major player. When they think about IT, the only thing I think of, David, is the fact that Jira being primarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've used Jira a little bit in the past, but it's more for development, but primarily in the pre-operational side.
I think it's changed. I think because it used to have Jira Service Desk, and I'm doing more research into it, but
yeah.
The new Jira Service Management is beyond just the development side.
That's right. And that's what I've heard as well. Some of my customers are using it for that very reason as well. I don't know, maybe that's the reason why, is that they've been historically, or their foundation, their their model has been pre-operations, but I agree, it should be in the Gartner. Gartner is actually one of my customers. Maybe I should talk to them about that.
That would be good.
Good question. Any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Well, folks, I do want to say thank you so much for your time. Monica, Creusa, thank you so much for your time and efforts with this as well. And I like to say maybe that whet your appetite a little bit, and hopefully we'll be seeing you sometime in the near future for some of our other courses that be much more specific to any one of these topics here.
Super. Thank you so much, Mike, to you, Creusa, for organizing and getting this all ready and together and invites out for us. And to all in attendance, we appreciate your attendance here today and look forward to serving you. I'll certainly be reaching out after this event and seeing if there are specific needs that need to be met. So thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, folks. Be safe. Stay warm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.